Chapter 10. Into the Moat. Val and Dirk plummeted to the murky water below, crashing into the large moat that surrounded the castle. Another captain or general or some other man of rank pushed his way between the rows of archers and pikemen. "Stand aside, men. Can't you see your superior is making his entrance?" He pushed his way in front of the squads. "All right, intruders, it's time to give up. Nowhere to run now." The man paused to scratch at his chin. Now what happened? Where did they get off to? "Sir," one of the men spoke up, "they just jumped off the edge into the moat." "Sir." Running to the side, he stared over the edge to see the two heads popping to the surface of the water. "What are you waiting for?" he yelled. "Archers, take aim and fire at will." The archers were quick to follow their orders. Falling into place along the wall, one after the other they launched their arrows over the side. Dirk raised a hand signaling to Val to silence his yammering. Turning his head was unnecessary. The screaming whistles were unmistakable to his trained elven ears. Without hesitation, Dirk lunged for the shoreline, diving under the water in an attempt to slow the barrage of arrows. Val wasted no time catching up with him, his slender body cutting through the water like a knife. The rain of arrows was constant. Volley after volley descended upon them like a torrent of lethal punishment. As Dirk poked his head up to take a breath of air, his ears picked up another sound that was certainly unpleasant to the ears. Taking the risk to glance over his shoulder and stealing a look at the rampart, he narrowly missed getting impaled. Several arrows grazed his flesh, just licking at his body with their steel tongues. A glance was all he needed to know what would be coming next, mages. 2. Up high. Mid-cast. Dirk bellowed as he began plowing through the water once more. Dive. The two yelled out in unison. They both knew what to expect next. The air intensified with a static charge that surged throughout the atmosphere. Thunder boomed as several flashes of lightning struck the water's surface, impacting the very spots the two had been only moments before. The moat that surrounded the sides and front of the castle, the rear being guarded by a mountainous range, was fed by a river that ran through the city, past the castle and off into the forest. Now Val had noticed the flow of water, and after contemplating the army that would soon be dispatched to retrieve them on the shoreline, he changed his direction, allowing the current to help heat his escape. This should throw them off. It took Dirk a moment to notice Val's change in trajectory and just another to alter his own as he pushed himself low under the water, avoiding the assault from above. It seemed to Dirk that they were almost out of hot water, so to speak, when he heard a girlish scream that fled from his brother's mouth. The scream stopped him cold in his tracks. It was like confronting a wall of solid stone. It took a moment to recover from the shock. The sight of his brother, screaming, with arrows protruding from his body, was something he never ever expected to see. Dirk exerted as much force on his muscles as he possibly could, pushing them to their limits, pushing them far beyond their limits. The gap between them closed fast. Dirk dove down beneath the waves, under the pooling blood that excreted from Val's almost motionless body, which now drifted with the current. Positioning himself below his brother, Dirk came to the surface, putting Val on his large muscular back. With a great intake of air, Dirk continued to swim as he struggled with the limp body on his back, now reduced to kicking his way downstream. The screams and cries of war grew fainter as they started moving farther and farther away from the castle. The rain of arrows came to almost a halt. One or two more thudded into Val's back. It was hard for Dirk to tell as he spent most of his time concentrating on keeping Val's head above the water and breathing at the opportune times. What seemed like over an hour, probably not more than several minutes, went by before Dirk felt as if the distance between them and the castle was finally great enough that they would have a moment to recover. They emerged from the river into a dense forest. Dirk placed his brother on the ground. His back resembled that of a porcupine with more arrows than he would be comfortable counting. "Oh, dear brother, is this the end of our journey? May the one true..." Dirk paused mid-sentence, remembering how he too had recently been on the brink of death. Though it seemed that life had all but left the motionless body on the ground, maybe there would still be time, a chance he could save him. What would he know? Anyway, it's not like he was a doctor. With much haste, Dirk scrambled for the wristband sheath that he had fashioned in the depths of that torture chamber back in the castle. Ah, there you are. What remained of the feather dropped to the ground, fleeing the hidden fold that had bound it to Dirk's body. Picking up the feather, Dirk shrugged. I do hope this works, he said dryly. Prying Val's stiff mouth open, he forced the feather deep down his throat. With a wince he pushed it deeper down than anyone would like to have anything pushed down through his or her gaping maw. If you listened carefully, you could hear the jaw cracking as Dirk's meaty paw dislocated the joints as the feather was sent as deep as it would go. Dirk held his breath, ignoring the damage he caused, standing beside his lifeless brother in anticipation of his return. A moment went by. Then another. Then another. Several more went on as Dirk fidgeted with the arrows, pulling one out after another, tears slowly welling up from within as the realization crept into his mind that Val would never be returning to the world of the living. Suddenly, the sound of a crackling fire could be heard, a fire that sounded like it was right in front of him. With a quick glance, Dirk searched for the cause of the sound. Before his eyes could focus on the vastness, Val's body erupted in flames as the fire consumed everything it touched, including the area around it. Dirk stood amongst the swirling vortex of fire, hidden in the flames. Concisely at that moment, the hunting party dispatched from the castle passed by slowly, watching the raging fire with much caution and care. They continued on hoping to find the fugitives further downstream. Dirk stood in the raging inferno, amazed at the sight, and frankly you would too, amidst the flames, fire swirling, yet there was no pain, no intense heat, just the sheer beauty of the picture. Dirk drank in the vision in front of him, vowing he would never forget what his eyes beheld. Then as suddenly as it started, it was all over. The fire vanished, leaving behind Val, rejuvenated and looking as healthy as ever. He stood there gazing at the stars, enjoying his new lease on life. Dirk's gaze was averted from Val's naked body, not wanting to stare at a bro's manhood, when Val let out a yelp. Dirk, you're naked. What the heck, man? Dirk's head jerked down to stare at his snake and berries airing out in the fading sunlight. Oh, come on, you're kidding. We're both naked. That's just wrong. Just plain wrong. Dirk gave the air a kick in frustration, letting out some steam in his annoyance. What do you mean both? Val's gaze fell down to his man-meat hugging his leg, then at Dirk's bald head, then he shot his hands to where his hair had been last. He checked. No, he shrieked. You should have let me be. I'd rather have suffered than have this fate bestowed upon me. Would you rather be dead? Dirk asked matter-of-factly. Yes, I would thank you very much. Val fell to his knees, distraught and almost depressed. Yeah, I bet you would have. Now get back to your feet. We've been here long enough. It's time we departed this place and found another, farther, much farther away from here. And let us never talk about this ever again. Agreed. Val got to his feet and joined Dirk at his side as they headed off into the thick of the forest, and neither one of them wanting to bring up the rear, silently agreeing to stay side by side, constantly averting their gaze of the other as they went off and disappeared into the wilds of the wilderness.